I'm Kevin Coleman with the Saturday Post, and I am with Phil Heimlich. And you have just spoken to the Republican Women of Ross County group, I think a little more than a dozen here, part of a series that they offer for especially candidates running for the primary, Republican primary, the 2nd Congressional District.
Yes.
So, who are you?
Well, I'm Phil Heimlich. I'm not the guy who invented the Heimlich maneuver. That was my dad, but he inspired me in politics because when he invented the Heimlich maneuver, he had to fight to get it out. All the medical organizations were opposed to it, and he had the courage to stand up for what he believed, and as a result, thousands of lives have been saved. And I was inspired by that, and that's why I'm willing to stand up to the political establishment and, to some degree, the Republican establishment. I am running as an anti-MAGA Republican. I'm a strong conservative. I believe we need to pay off our national debt, but I also believe in restoring civility. I believe that our opponents are not our enemies. I don't believe in personal attacks. I don't believe in name calling, and I'm not going to engage in that. I also stand for respect in the law. I'm a former prosecutor. What that means is those guys who rioted in Portland, who broke all the windows and attacked the cops, they need to be accountable. But I also believe that mob that on January 6th that attacked our Capitol, citadel of our democracy, and injured 140 cops and broke windows, they need to be held accountable, as well as the higher-ups who inspired that attack. So I believe in respect for law across the board. I'm also very strong about protecting our democracy. This stuff about the 2020 election being stolen is not true, and the efforts to overturn it, in my opinion, were wrong. And I am a very strong believer in protecting our democracy, because the key to our democracy is the peaceful transfer of power. That means if you lose, you concede. You don't try through violence or fraud to overturn the election. If we allow people who lose elections to always deny that they lost it, we won't have a democracy very long. In my view, I will always put country first and party second. And I will always put the Constitution ahead of any individual. The people who are running against me, they're my opponents, but they're not my enemies. And you know, there's a story I told about a guy in World War II who's kind of my example of leadership. His name is Roddy Edmonds. He was a sergeant in the Army at the Battle of the Bulge. And 1,000+ of soldiers were captured by the Germans and sent to a prison camp. And the German commandant lined up all the American soldiers and said to Roddy Edmonds, who was the commanding officer, "Tell us who the Jewish soldiers are." And he had all the men step forward, and he said, "We are all Jews here." And then the commandant pointed a pistol at his head and said, "Now tell us who the Jewish soldiers are." And Sergeant Edmonds said, "We are all Jews here. We are all Americans." And that's the kind of leader I want to be, because whether we're Democrats or Republicans, we are all Americans. And the reason I believe in respecting both my opponents and my supporters, it's like Abraham Lincoln said after the Civil War, after 600,000 men died, he said, "Charity for all, malice for none." If he can forgive the South for all those deaths, can't we be respectful towards the people who oppose us? Ronald Reagan got things done by working with Democrats and not making them his enemies. I got things done on Cincinnati City Council, like adding cops and putting in strong restrictions on porn shops and strip clubs. I got that done by being willing to work with the other party and with everyone in my party. And that's the attitude that I intend to take to Congress.
All right. You had a few questions from the group here, especially regarding your opinions towards Trump. It sounds like you pretty much explained that, and you run on as an anti-MAGA campaign.
Yeah.
So Any expansion on that?
Sure. When I say I'm anti-MAGA, that means I don't engage. When I say I'm anti-MAGA, that means I don't engage in personal attacks. I don't use terms from the Nazis like vermin or poisoning the blood of our country. It also means I believe in the peaceful transfer of power. That when you lose, you don't try to overturn the election, you concede. It means, for example, on that the attack on January 6th, President Trump says that those guys who did that are patriots or they're hostages. Well, I got news for you. Patriots don't beat up cops. Patriots don't break windows and smear their feces on the walls of the Capitol. They're not patriots, they're not hostages, they're criminals. And as a prosecutor, I never asked whether the person I was prosecuting was a Democrat or Republican or what their political beliefs were. As my old boss in the prosecutor's office once said, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. So I don't play favorites when it comes to respecting the law. Everybody has to respect the law. Nobody is above the law.
And expand a little on your work as a prosecutor or assistant prosecutor?
Yes. For 10 years, I served as an assistant county prosecutor in Hamilton County. I prosecuted every crime from murder to rape to drug offenses. And I worked hard as a prosecutor, and I cared about victims, especially victims of violent crime. And that has inspired me to want to demand that we have respect for the law. That means whether you were rioting in Portland or if you attacked the Capitol, no one is above the law.
And Hamilton County is Cincinnati?
It includes Cincinnati.
Okay. All right. How can people learn more about your campaign?
They can go to Phil Heimlich for Congress.
And if they want to learn the Heimlich maneuver, then they would need to learn from your dad.
Well, my dad passed away, but I'll demonstrate it right now. I'm not going to put my arms around him. If it was an attractive woman, I'd demonstrate it. But
Here,
Connie, you want to be a demonstration? Have me demonstrate the Heimlich maneuver, or Nancy, one of you? Nancy, one of you, come over here.
I think we all had a good lunch, so we don't want to lose it. So maybe
all right.
not.
Well, what you do is to perform the Heimlich maneuver, because this is important. Any parent or babysitter or older brother or sister seriously needs to know how. And what you do is you stand behind the choking victim, you make a fist with one hand, you grab it with the other, and you place it kind of below the belly button here, and you do a quick upward thrust. And that, if you...
And that triggers a diaphragm?
It pushes, the air forces the object out, which my father worked on for a long time before he released it. But it saved thousands and thousands of lives. And it's something that everybody can learn how to perform, whether you're a child or an adult. You can learn how to perform it, and everyone should know how to do it.
All right. Phil Heimlich, who is not running for doctor, but as a congressman for...
Republican primary in the 2nd District of Ohio.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks.